Good morning, everybody. At this time, we will call the meeting to order for Tuesday, November 26, 2013. And the first item is the approval of the agenda, and we do have one agenda addition.
I move approval with the addition.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Approved. Any citizens to be heard on any item that is not on the agenda? Next item is, are the bills here yet? We can pay them in advance.
Move to approve the bills.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
The bills are paid. Miss Porter, how are you?
I'm good, and I have group with me, so.
Come on up, and even though we know some, would you introduce them for us, please?
Hey.
And you're going to go over the income maintenance programs review, and you'll have to tell us what MFIP stands for.
Okay, we have several things, and I'm hoping we were maybe a little overzealous when I put this together, hoping we'll get through it all, but we'll talk fast, and then if there's any topics that you'd like us to come back for, we will sure do that. So I'll start. I have Teresa Hazeman here with me. Teresa is with Rural Minnesota SEP. Larry Young is one of our newest financial assistance supervisors that we hired over this past year, and then Mary Lou Olson, also financial assistant supervisor. So have the experts.
With all the answers.
That's right. So I did provide in your packet the PowerPoint that we're going to go over. The one thing I am going to do is that I didn't provide in your packet. I just wasn't sure how much paper you wanted, so I'll just pass this around while we talk. But what this is we're going to be talking about our MFIP Biennial Service Agreement, and MFIP stands for Minnesota Family Investment Program. That agreement is posted on our website right now for public comment. It will be due, we send it in electronically at the end of this month, and then it's approved by the Department of Human Services, and then the final agreement will get posted on our website for continued comment. But also attached to that agreement is our program improvement plan, which Teresa will talk about. Our emergency assistance plan, which you've reviewed in the past. There's been really relatively no changes to that except for updating the federal poverty guidelines, is attached to that as well. And then the fourth document is our protocol that we've been working on to comply with the legislation regarding doing drug testing for convicted felons on public assistance programs. So that's attached here as well. So again, we'll be talking about these, but I'll circulate them as we talk. Okay, so our agenda, what we want to talk about is give you an update on our staffing in our income maintenance unit. We want to talk about the programs that we administer, the state and federal programs, give you a visual of some of our caseload trends, and then we'll talk about the MFIP plan, and then we'll talk a little bit about MNsure, what's going on with MNsure in terms of our staffing at the county level. So I'm going to turn it over to Mary to start with.
So the first one is our staffing level, and you can see that we have about 11 staff that have been here less than 2 years, and to become comfortable with our programs, it takes a minimum of 2 years before you're comfortable. We're never really very comfortable. But we have quite a staff. We have 24 financial workers, 1 financial assistance specialist, and 2 supervisors in our units.
So you'll see right in the middle of the grid there, that's our financial unit. The names at the bottom going all the way up to, goodness sakes, well, Jennifer Landers are all new within the last year. The last 4 names we just hired last month. Those were the staff that we added with the MNsure. The 1 open position we just offered, and that person will be starting on the 9th of October. So, December, back in October. So we're getting those positions filled so that we can move forward with MNsure.
Okay, the next screen is the state and federal programs we administer. The cash programs are MFIP, Diversionary Work Program, the Work Benefit Program, General Assistance, MSA, GRH, Refugee Cash, of course the SNAP known as the food support program. Child care, we have MFIP and basic sliding fee. Medical assistance, and under that we have the medical assistance access transportation. Emergency assistance for family, that's EA, and emergency general assistance for the rest. And then county funded burials. And we have some screenshots of the programs.
The one thing I just want to comment about all these programs is to remember that, you know, we are a state supervised, county administered human service system. So these are state and federal programs. The eligibility requirements are set by the state and federal government. We process applications. We are audited by the state and the federal government in various ways throughout these programs. So if you know, we from time to time have concerns about these programs being too generous, from time to time have concerns about these programs being not enough to meet the needs. Again, we administer these programs, we don't set the criteria, and then we're monitored in terms of determining that eligibility correctly, putting people on when they're eligible, not finding them eligible when we don't have the documentation. So there's a lot of things that govern all of these programs. So.
Okay, the first one is the Minnesota Family Investment Program, and this is our TANF program for the state of Minnesota. It's for pregnant women, families with minor children, caregiver parents, families under 200% of the FPG. And the example there is if you have a family of 3 with 0 income, the cash grant would be $532 and the SNAP would be $446. This is limited to 60 months, but we do have some extensions in the state of Minnesota. If they meet certain criteria, it can go past the 5-year limit in the state of Minnesota. Any questions on that one?
So you can see the caseload has been fairly stable there, gone up a little bit.
We're going up, yeah, a little bit, not much, but a little bit. Diversionary work program. This is also part of the TANF. The state of Minnesota took people who recently left the work environment and wants to get them back connected with it. So this is a time limit. It's 4 months only. And the object of this is to get them back into the workforce. And so before they even get assistance, they have to connect with employment services and do a plan, hopefully getting them back in before in the workforce before the 4 months is up, so that they don't transition into MFIP.
So families coming in and applying for the first program, MFIP and DWP, work with Teresa's program. So when she talks about that, you can make the connection.
Any questions on that one? This is vendor paid. The rent and the stuff has been, the grant is vendor paid to the rent and utilities.
Does the first program have a limit too, like this one does now? You're talking about?
The MFIP program,
Yeah,
that's a 60-month.
that's 60
It's
months.
5 years, but the state of Minnesota does have some extensions. So if there's someone that's working, but their income's not enough to push them off, they could continue on in getting a grant there.
That's a lifetime, or 5 years
Mhm.
lifetime.
Mhm.
yeah.
5 years.
If you were on 10 years ago and you come back again,
You still, you have to meet one of those extension criterias to get it again. Okay, the work benefit program is for those who exit off of MFIP and DWP that are working and their earnings are under 200%. They can get a $25 monthly payment. And this really helps with our participation rate for the MFIP, the TANF program. Helps us meet our participation rate for employed persons in the state of Minnesota. We have a few, they're not very many.
The General Assistance Program is the next one. That's a state-funded program. It is a cash program. Basically, a majority of it is there's different criteria that a person can get general assistance. It's a $203 a month grant. Primarily, a lot of the times it's a medical statement from a doctor that says they're unable to work for a period of time.
Now, can you get this one even if you're on MFIP?
No.
You can only get one of the cash programs at a time.
We used to have family GA, but that was taken away when MFIP came in.
MSA, that's Minnesota Supplemental Assistance. This is another state-funded program. A person that is receiving SSI and living alone would be eligible for. The average grant is about $81 a month, or is $81 a month. There's also criteria that if, which could be a higher amount if a person had a special diet or something, or another statement from a doctor that says there's a list of criteria for special diets that they would get additional amount onto that grant.
And on this, you'll see that our grants, our case count has gone down. And what I attribute that to is that most of our MSA people are living in shared rental, and when you get in a shared, it's a lower, what do you call that? Standard,
for
which makes them income ineligible for the programs. That's why we're seeing them going down.
Does this one also have the criteria for the poverty guidelines to get this?
Well, they have
You
to
have
be
to be
on
on
SSI.
SSI.
They have to be on
Okay,
SSI
okay.
to get it, so no.
GRH, which is Group Residential Housing, this is a state-funded program that provides additional monies to, like, adult foster homes, that if someone is placed in one of those homes, it helps pay for the room and board. Average monthly benefit is $545 that gets paid through the GRH program. But a portion of it is what the individual pays out of their income, and the GRH pays the remaining amount.
And this program's for people who really can't live in the community on their own. Need some kind of assistance, whether it's meal making or medication, that kind of thing, some kind of help.
You say the average, so what's the, is there a limit as how high you can go on that, or?
Yeah, there is a standard. Is it
876, I believe, right now is the standard. So a provider would get that amount of money for someone living in that residence.
If they had zero income, we'd pay up to that amount.
But if they had income, they would pay a percentage, a portion of their income towards that 876, and the state would pay the remaining amount.
Food
SNAP.
support?
Yep, this is our food support SNAP program. It's federally funded, helps people with low income buy food. Average monthly benefits are $118 per month, per person. And that varies again for the household size, income, expenses.
It's not meant to meet your total food need, it's meant to help your total food need. And I always will call this food support, I'm sorry. I haven't gotten used to SNAP yet.
Some of us are still on food stamps. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna always be that for me.
Coupons, yes.
Okay, the next is childcare. We have the MFIP and basic sliding fee childcare. Basic sliding fee, we get an allocation that we can go over, but if we do go over, it's county dollars, so we keep our eye on that. And MFIP, of course, is to help people get employment, so we want to make sure childcare is there. That does not have a limit that's available. You can see that, I don't really know why, but our number has gone down a little bit, but this is just from October for this year.
I would also just add this, the basic sliding fee program is the one program that does have a county share. So for the basic sliding fee childcare, we budget about $55,000 is our county share for that program.
When you say you don't know why it's dropped, could the economic situation, the low unemployment have something to do with it?
It could, but we also can pay for people seeking employment up to
Yeah.
240 hours a calendar year, though it doesn't take much time and you've ended that. So if you have to be in an activity, a work activity of some kind, it does cover school if it meets the plan, and most of them do. But I don't know, we'll have to wait till the end of the year and see where our number is for the average.
How does the federal and state blend together here? I mean, you're listing both federal funds, average monthly assistance per family 17, and then for state, average is 11. Is that either or again, or is it together?
They're separate childcare programs, so you may be eligible for the MFIP childcare, or you may be eligible for basic sliding fee. So they're two separate
You
programs.
can't get both.
No, correct.
Medical assistance, that's our growing caseload right now. You'll see that that's gone up a little bit. With MNsure coming, I'm anticipating that we're going to have a greater increase in that we're going to be seeing next year. We're already seeing some of the effects of that, and I'll get into that when we get into the MNsure part of it. But that's medical assistance. Any questions on medical assistance?
And if you remember when we came to the board and talked about the impacts of MNsure and the caseload projections that the state gave us, they projected 1,700 new cases that would be managed by the county. So we'll see that number change pretty substantially in the next year.
So the more nursing homes that open up in Clay County, the more this will go up to, I mean, the medical assistant.
Yes.
Helps pay for that.
If you have the beds, people would come to Clay County.
But they wouldn't
necessarily be on medical,
Right.
but some of them could.
And they may not necessarily show up on our numbers, would they, if they're coming from another county?
Not necessarily, but the state of Minnesota, they could be coming from another county, or they could be coming from North Dakota, and then in 2 years they would be ours.
So these numbers reflect individuals who are the financial responsibility of Clay County, not statewide. So if we have an individual, correct me if I'm wrong here, but if we have an individual that's lived in our community and goes to a nursing home, maybe in Ottertail County, they still remain on medical assistance through Clay County, correct?
They're our responsibility.
Yeah, but even though they're placed in another county, so they would show up on our numbers.
They actually would show up in the other county numbers.
Oh, they would.
Because we would send that case to that county to be serviced by that county they're residing in. And vice versa. We service the cases from other counties
Who we pay,
in ours. It's all,
but it comes from our allocations. I mean, it's,
there's no allocation really under medical assistance.
It's state and federal dollars.
Right. I mean, but the county isn't given X amount of dollars for that.
The only share we have for a nursing home is if they're under 65 and they're in a nursing home, then we do have a county share that we pay if they're Clay County's financial responsibility.
Does that number stay fairly consistent, or?
You know, it has. I want to say, I didn't bring our budgets, but I think we've budgeted about 90 to 100,000 to pay for that share for Clay County individuals.
And we don't have a lot
Yeah.
that are under 65.
Right.
Okay, caseload trends, you'll see that we've been increasing pretty steady, and I don't see that stopping. Any questions there?
All right. You go to county burials or what? Okay, the next slide is county burials. This is the one program that is total county dollars, and so we budget, I think we budgeted $75,000 for 2013. We jumped that up a little bit for 2014 to $85,000. But you can see the number of county burials that we've done since 2008, the expenditures and the average cost. We do, for some of the, again, this is for individuals who have no means, and the families don't have a means to provide a burial, so we work with the local funeral homes and provide that service. And there are some situations where we do recoup some funds if they have some savings or whatever the case may be in that application process, so.
I have a question here on if it's a burial in the Moorhead area, does that rotate between Wright and Corsmo month to month, or how does that work?
It depends upon where the family takes the body.
Okay.
Okay?
All right, okay. And then in the, for instance, in
The
It's
ones
one in
without-
West Chilson, is that, no, what's the one in Barnesville?
Holt-
Dobmeyer?
Delmeyer.
Delmeyer. They're involved in this too.
Mhm.
You know, are there any others within Clay County? I know Wright has a
There's-
Pauley
Right.
one too, but basically Corsmo, Wright, and then
Corsmo,
Delmeyer.
Wright. Delmeyer.
Ulen, is there?
Is there one in Ulen?
No.
I don't think so.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so, as you can see, there's a number of programs that we administer. So if the financial workers, when they're taking applications and processing applications, if there is a concern about anything that's indicated on the application or omitted from the application, or if they've gotten information to suggest something is not quite right on the application, we do have a fraud prevention and intervention program through Sandy Thorne's unit in Child Support Fraud and Collections. So they work very closely with our financial workers and will make a referral to that unit if there is a concern. So some of the things that tend to come up primarily are concerns about household composition, so who's living in the house. The next area is any unreported income or jobs that maybe the concern that they're not reporting a job or income earned. And then verification of residency is the third area that seems to come up.
In the
Quite a bit.
unreported income, we get matches from, it's the IVS matches income, earned income verification system that the state has. It's connecting it. And so if the IRS has information, we'll get matches on the Social Security numbers that Maxis doesn't have this in there, but it's been reported to them. So then we do referrals on those kind of cases too.
So they
remember
share
them.
reported incomes with you?
Mhm. So in the Band-Aids, Social Security, unemployment, we get that information. So they get a lot they get a lot of referrals from us to check out that kind of
So
situation.
do you get files quarterly then? Because that's how most
Quarterly, it
businesses do
depends upon what report it is. Some are quarterly, some are twice a year.
Okay.
Verification of residency, we have that quite a bit because we're in border with North Dakota. We have a lot of people come in, and when we're interviewing, if something doesn't quite match or we're getting conflicting information, we'll send an FBI out to have that checked out before we issue benefits.
So once a referral is made, the fraud investigator will assess the situation. If there is not information to suggest that information is inaccurate, it's simply closed. If there is a concern and fraud is found to have occurred, then that communication goes back to the financial worker and they calculate if there's been any overpayments made to the recipient, or they will also calculate what savings the state will see as a result of stopping benefits from going out. So maybe benefits haven't gone out yet at all, so there's a calculation that we do there as well. The fraud investigator will work with the individual to sign what's called intentional program violation, which is where they acknowledge that either they've omitted something or were inaccurate on their application. And this allows the financial worker to apply sanctions as it relates to the different programs. So there's different sanctions based on the program.
Rhonda or Mary, question for you. You mentioned, and we see here that in a lot of cases caseloads go up. How is that compared with the number of people we have working on this side? Are these, we often hear the caseload workers are just kind of overburdened with caseloads. Is it the same with these folks too?
I did actually ask for some numbers, and I was surprised myself. In 2012, for Clay County, they did 403 investigations. 2013 year-to-date, they've done 521. So clearly, and so I asked a little bit, and Sandy might have more information, but I asked a little bit what that seems to be. Certainly, we've filled some of our financial work positions. The busier the financial workers are and the turnover that we have, sometimes we miss those things and we don't catch and make a referral when we could. So that certainly, the caseload growth is certainly a part of it. And then the fraud investigator talked about those IVES matches as being a tool that they're using to identify employment and income.
And another thing that's attributing this is a 6-month reporting for the food support program, since that's come into play. The clients are told they don't have to report unless their income goes over 138%, and they get a figure on the notice. But a lot of them don't, I don't know if they misunderstand it or they just don't report that they started a job, you know, and that did go over. So then we get a report or we get a match somehow. We find out about it, and we have more referrals because of that. Or they left the state of Minnesota. They don't tell us about that.
Now, of the 400 or 500 cases that you do each year, what is the result of that? I mean, is there...
You know, I didn't bring that information, and I intended to do kind of a separate board presentation on our fraud cases and what that looks like, but perhaps Sandy, do you have any?
What are you looking for?
The question?
I mean, when you do a fraud investigation, I mean, are you finding there's a lot of fraud, or is there...
What are the statistical results of investigations, I guess is...
Yeah, I don't know the statistics off the top of my head, but yeah, we do find a lot of things that are in error. And part of the calculation for the state and the fraud prevention piece is they project 3 months out because they feel that it generally will take about 3 months to catch up with somebody who is committing fraud. So that's part of the calculations that the state does to determine if a program is successful or not for fraud prevention. But like Rhonda said, it sounds like we'll be coming to the board and explaining in more detail how that works.
Yep, we'll bring that data. So at the point that if fraud is found, then a referral is made to our collections unit, also in Sandy's unit, to recoup any overpayments. We will recoup those overpayments, they'll get paid to the county, and then we pay that back to the state. Depending on the program where fraud is found, there are portions of that recoupment that the county does get to keep, and we do budget for that in our budget. When there are fraud situations that reach a certain threshold, I think 500 has been what we look at here, we do consult with the county attorney's office. Jenny is very involved in those to explore if criminal charges should be filed. So, and we can bring data on those numbers too. Okay, so that's kind of the summary of the different programs. We're going to move into the MFIP Biennial Service Agreement. This is the agreement that I was circulating around. There's several pieces to that agreement. It needs to be sent to the Department of Human Services at the end of this month. It includes a plan as to how we're going to use the money that's allocated to Clay County. Clay County's allocated $1,035,270, and we have to submit a plan as to how those dollars are going to be spent. This is a 2-year plan, so we've done this going back a number of years for the plan. And this is where Rural Minnesota SEP is very involved in this service agreement. It also involves our county's emergency assistance plan. And then this year, what is new is they've asked about the county's protocol for complying with the drug testing for felons on MFIP or some of the cash programs. So the folks that are eligible to receive services under these MFIP dollars are the same as for the MFIP program. So pregnant women, families with minor children, and then non-custodial parents of minor children who are receiving MFIP. The plan, there are certain things that we must provide with these funds under the law, and they are listed there. So the first one is the administration of the MFIP and the DWP program. So this is the work that the financial workers do. When somebody comes in and applies for benefits, this is the work that they do. And they earn revenue based on their activity. The history of earnings has been around $100,000, so one of the things that we did put in the budget for this next agreement is little over $114,000, which is the amount that we expect our staff will earn. That's one of the first things we do when we set the budget for these funds, is we look at the level of earnings our staff have, and we plug that in right away, because we don't want to sell ourselves short on what they're earning for the work that they do. The next 4 bullets, Teresa Hazeman is going to talk about. This is the work that Rural Minnesota SEP does. So when an individual or family comes in, they apply for services, that referral gets made to Teresa's department, and they work with them. So she's going to talk a little bit about what they do. And then the last bullet there is the Emergency Assistance Program. This program is administered by our county staff. This is the plan that the board has approved over time. We are budgeting this for the next 2 years, $165,000 in that program, and we'll talk a little bit about what that level of spending has been, but we figured $165,000 was adequate to administer that program. So I'm going to turn it over to Teresa and let her talk a little bit about their role.
Thank you.
Put the microphone in front of you.
Oh, okay. I just want to say a couple things about the funding first. With the MFIB program, it is federally funded, a portion of it through the TANF, the Temporary Aid to Needy Families. And then the state of Minnesota added that and then added 2 other portions of it that are state funded, and that's the FSS, Family Stabilization Services, and the DWP. Those come out of state funds. And the whole purpose of DWP, as Mary said, is to prevent them from becoming eligible for MFIB. So when somebody comes and they've been found eligible for the MFIB or DWP program, with the diversionary work program, they're referred to our office immediately before eligibility is determined. They need to develop a plan that's focused on getting a job in the shortest amount of time that they can. With the MFIB program, eligibility has been determined. They come up to an orientation in our services. Now, orientation involves everything that's available to them and expected requirements, because they both have expected requirements of participation. Once they've been referred and they do the orientation, we do an assessment, and the state has put together an employability measure, and that is really a strength-based, focused assessment that asks us to take a look at what does the household look at, what's their transportation needs, are there any physical or mental health barriers in the household, what are their child care needs. So it's a pretty comprehensive assessment. And then from there we'll develop their plan. And that plan is going to address what is it going to take you to get from where you are today to self-sufficiency, that job that's going to take you off from cash assistance. And of those services that we have available, we've got a job search plan, and that job search we do in a workshop, and it involves job finding, getting, seeking, advancing, and leaving. How do you get a job? What are your skills? How do you network? How do you interview? What do you do after the interview program? And it is really a needed service, because I can meet with somebody that maybe comes in with a 4-year degree and they are not quite sure how to start that interview process in that getting a job. The diversionary work is that quickly too. One of the things I really wanted to say about MFIB and DWP is the earlier we can get them into work, the earlier we can evaluate how they're doing on the job. So we have a work training, a subsidized work program that we use a lot. We had it through supported work, and those funds went away, unfortunately, but we placed people on a work site, and we asked that their work skills be evaluated. And then from their work skills, as they're being evaluated, what can we do about them? You know, we still see a lot of dependability and reliability that comes up as an issue. So what are the steps that they need to take to overcome that? The Family Stabilization Service, that basically has 3 goals. Somebody becomes eligible for that based on an illness, disability in their household. They're unable to work according to medical documentation. So their 3 goals are that they entered employment, that with the skills that they have, they can get a job even with that disability that may be preventing them. One of them is to remove a barrier. So they've had a barrier, the child care. They had a disabled child, they've now gone to school, they're getting special services in the school. If we can remove that barrier, then they can gain employment. And the third goal is that they have an alternative source of funds. And this is our SSI, the folks that get SSI. And I wish I had the numbers, but we are seeing more people get approved for disability services under Social Security. Then the extension services. So Mary had talked about there are additional state funds available for extension. They've utilized their 60 months. There are criteria that go along with it because somebody may not get to that benefit. They may not get to that lifetime benefit because of the activities that they've done during their MFIP program. But to get to it, they need to be working so many hours a week to be approved for that extension. Or there needs to be an illness or incapacity in the household. And again, the goal is employment. They're job seeking. They're using our certified or our work training. One of the things that we expect to see in the future, we're looking at some different changes in how the state's going to be measuring performance. A little bit on more education programs, more focus on entered employment. So we're going to start seeing the ability to improve on more education. We're finding that that will help them gain employment and increase their wages. So I expect that in the future we'll see more training like at a tech school or CDL training where they can come out and they can make good wages when they're done.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Questions?
All right. This is, did you, Teresa, want to just talk really briefly about the PIP? There was one
Right.
Performance area that we did not meet, and so we needed to develop a program improvement plan that'll get attached to our service agreement. Do you want to just make a quick couple comments?
So the self-sufficiency index and the work participation rates are the two outcomes that are measured right now. Clay County continues to exceed that. That's those folks that have gotten a job and they've stayed off from cash assistance, and then the measurement is in there. The work participation rate has just jumped up to a 50% participation of those folks that are enrolled for MFIP. DWP does not count in that. Those folks that would typically come on and get a job quickly, they're not part of that. And so right now we did not meet that participation rate. So we needed to put a plan of action in how we're going to improve it. And one of the things that we've talked about is we're coordinating a service right now with cultural diversity, and we've got the money from the state to enhance refugee program services for job seeking. So they'll get special interpretative services, special job seeking services through the refugee program. And we can tell that we had 20 that we could enroll last year, but we got the grant short, so we had 15, and 11 of those 15 did get a job right away, and the other ones are still working on it. We have the money again for this year, and it's for those refugees that have been in the country less than 5 years. Okay? My staff have just gone through family development training, and it's a national certified training, and it is focused on, you know, it's really got a social work base. It's focused on strengths, finding motivation, identifying the barriers, and coming at it from a case management point of view. So Clay County Employment and Training Providers were the first ones to receive this, and my staff all have been certified in this family development. I'm going to add just a little bit more about that because it came as a federal, but the state is actually looking at us and how we could develop this further and building an infrastructure so that we can, this could be a fee-for-service that rural Minnesota SEP goes out into. So I feel really fortunate. My staff was trained in it. They have this certification, and it truly was developed around programs that help people on cash assistance get employment and how we deliver services to them. Okay? Well, yeah.
Question, Teresa, does everyone that applies for any program, you know, are they all, if they don't have a job at all, are they all go through you, every one of them?
every one of them. They're going to go through, at one time they had exemptions, but they've made that Family Stabilization Service program to help those that have gotten a bigger barrier to get employment. So everyone's
For
going
family
through.
cash, for the
Oh, yeah.
MFIP and DWP.
Yeah.
Very good.
So you have to be in the county so long before you can apply for the benefits?
Yes.
Well, not, you have to be a Minnesota
Si-
resident for 30 days.
Somebody
Before-
from North Dakota to Minnesota.
Yeah, but if you came from another county in Minnesota, you can make application and we put you in, as long as you've been in the state of Minnesota for 30 days.
Except for healthcare, correct? Healthcare.
Doesn't have a 30-day residency requirement.
What about another country? Same thing?
Same thing. You have to meet the immigration status to be qualified to meet in the programs. All of them have citizenship immigration status. You have to be documented and meet one of the criteria. So we have to look at their cards, what they are, make a determination if they are eligible for that program based on what they came in as, refugee. Some people have no documentation, they're not eligible.
And we do see that. Just a couple other things that I'd want to mention about that is that we are making more of our supported work up front. The process is go through job search, come in and do supported work, but we know we've got recycling families. They've had cash assistance, they've gotten a job, and they're coming back through again. So we're trying to go right into that work training or that subsidized work to identify what's going on with you while you're on the job. So we're doing a look at that more up front. We're the employer of record. We pay the wage while they're doing it. And the supervisors send us a monthly evaluation. I've got job developers that'll go out and work with the work site on what we can do to help that family. We also have a National Career Readiness Certificate that we've started, and employers have been asking for that. And we will test on math, reading, finding information, and when people finish it, they get this credential that they can now sell to the employers. And I was at a meeting probably about a year ago, and it was on manufacturers in the community. And one of the things they said is, people can finish school, they can finish their tech school, and it comes time to now try to find information, they can't find the information. They have all those other skills, and if you've ever taken that test, it's like you read it and you read it, and finding that information in it, it's hard to answer the questions. So they've identified that finding information is something that employers really need, and we do that. We're providing that training for the National Career Readiness Certification.
So
I can keep going.
If I could follow up, and for one thing, I think this is great what you do.
Thank you.
A lot of times in the public perception is that, you know, these things aren't happening, and they're happening. And I think it's good when we can tell the public that our goal is to get people off of assistance and back to being self-sustainable people. And and so what you do is great. Now, with that, I'm sure you have some that come in there that get it right away and that can and get on, and they, do you have some that you struggle with then too?
Yes.
And,
You find that when it's a mandatory program versus a voluntary program, if I can get somebody to really start taking a look at, hey, we've got some opportunities here for you, you grab onto them, you latch onto them, we're going to help you get to where you need to be. And we'll have people, it's like, why do I have to do this? And they'll personalize it. You're making me do this. And it's all about choices. We have to point out, you've got some choices that you're making here. And when you make that choice, I need to let you know how it can impact you. You can grab it, you can get a job, etc. Or you're going to go into and lose money when you can't follow the program, doing that job search, turning that information in, working with your job counselor. Your cash grant is going to get reduced by 10%. You still don't do it, it's going to get reduced by 30%. They hit a 7th sanction, their cash closes. They do not get cash at that point in time. They can gain compliance, they can get cash. That can be a back and forth thing through that program. In extended MFIB, they can lose lifetime eligibility if they're not doing what they need to do. So, you know, there's benefits and there's consequences.
Okay, and I know we're over in time. The emergency assistance program, as you can see, has gone down in expenditures. That's why we've budgeted the $165,000. Part of that is in 2011, we came before the board and talked about our emergency plan, and we did some revisions in the requirements to receive those emergency funds. We increased the percentage of expenditures the applicant would have to show that went toward basic needs and housing. We also implemented a referral to financial literacy to the Lakes and Prairies program for applicants who are coming in where we feel we really need to make sure we provide some financial literacy training for them. So we've added some pieces, and we think that's why some of those applicants and dollar expenditures have gone down. So that's a part of the service agreement as well. The last piece I'll just talk with you briefly about is you've been hearing a little bit about it on the news, the drug testing for convicted drug felons who are on certain public assistance programs. So I think it's just important to know that this is not new. The ability to drug test and require that has been there since 1997, but it really relied on the applicants noting that on the application. So the question was there, and it may or may not have been indicated. What's changed is this last legislative session in 2012, the state court administrator now is required to send a report to the Commissioner of Human Services every 6 months, which indicates anyone who has who is a convicted drug felon, and then the state matches those names with current recipients on these public programs. And then they send those names to the counties that are financially responsible for administering the program. So they did one initial run that went way back to 97 to capture any of those folks, and then they'll do it every 6 months from there. So we got our list. We had 19 individuals on that list. At initial check, we had, I think all of those folks were on assistance at the time. We've now done a check, and we've had 5 of those folks go off of assistance, 4 or 5 go off of assistance. We've sent letters to all of them. The legislation and the rule requires us to send them a letter to indicate that they've been identified, to indicate that they're on one of the programs that requires this. And basically, so that's kind of where we're at this point, is reaching out to those individuals, informing them about the requirement and how we would assist them in making sure that this occurs. We had a meeting with Mike Stoltman at Corrections and Kathy McKay at Public Health to work with them on helping us to get the drug screens completed. So what we will do is we will work with Corrections first. If any of the individuals that we receive on the list are currently involved in Corrections, and if Corrections is already doing drug testing as a part of their requirement, we will work with them to get the results of that for what we need. If they're not involved in Corrections, or if they're not involved with any chemical health treatment provider, then we will make a referral to Public Health, and they will do the drug screen for us. Right now, Public Health does drug screens for us for families involved in our child protection or chemical health service system, so it's a process we already have in place, so that worked out fairly nicely. So we are working through that process. The State Department of Human Services is asking for our protocol in that, and so that is what I circulated. It really just outlines the steps that we will take to document and to make sure all of our applicants have complied with the process. So that is what that's all about. Questions on that?
Well, I see you screen them about twice a year, you say? And you feel that's enough for screening?
Well, that is some county discretion, but as we understand the statute and the rules, the drug testing eligibility for the program is contingent on the drug testing. So the programs that are involved here, and correct me if I'm wrong, are reviewed every 6 months or annually. So if we are going to tie the drug testing to their eligibility, it made sense that it coincide with how often we determine their eligibility. Now, some counties are looking at this differently. We looked at it as, let's look at all of our individuals, and if they're on a program that requires a review every 6 months, we will randomly do it every 6 months. Some counties are looking at it like you can randomly test, you wouldn't have to test everyone at the point of review. You could randomly select 3 of your population and test them. The next year, 5. We thought, based on the spirit of the legislation, it made sense that we do it for all of our individuals, coinciding with eligibility for their programs. But there is discretion there.
Go ahead, Frank.
Now, when you say screening, do we screen regular people for drug testing too, or are you just talking about the 19 people right now?
Yeah, it's just the individuals that are identified on the certain programs, and they're identified as having a felony drug conviction.
Okay. Do we do any type of other drug testing on people?
No. Not in these particular programs. We do in our child protection or chemical health service area. If we're working with families where maybe we've got kids removed from their care and the concerns are drug or alcohol use, we do some random drug testing in those scenarios as well as a part of our core CHIPS process. But this would be specific to the public assistance programs.
Rhonda, is this something that we're supposed to include then in our service agreement?
Yes.
What our process is or our plan is? Could we in our plan say that we will just do random drug testing?
We could.
For these people? And the reason I say that, because if we say, well, we're going to do it every 6 months, so they have it 1 month and all of a sudden they're okay, and so, geez, I'm good for another 5 months, I don't have to worry about it till another 6 months comes around. That doesn't mean we're going to do it more frequently, but it would seem to me that if somebody knew what our plan was, and if it said, well, I'm only going to get tested once every 6 months, if I get tested in January, I don't have to worry about it again until July. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. So could we, in our own policy, for us, just say, we are going to incorporate the recommended drug testing, but it's going to be random.
Sure, we could
and we will meet at least the minimum requirements.
Sure, we could reword, and I'll have to look at how I worded it, but we could say at a minimum twice a year. And I agree with what you're saying. And in fact, I think that what the system will allow us to do is set kind of a tickler in our system that will flag us to do it. And we could, for example, if someone just had a review last month, we could turn around in a couple weeks, do a test, even though we don't necessarily have to review theirs for 5 more months out, to make it really that random so that it's not.
We just want to make sure we don't miss them, so we thought if we do it at their review time when we're looking at their case, that would clue us in that we have to do this, otherwise we might miss them.
I think our policy should be open, or our procedures should be open to say, you know, anytime. I think, you know, you get Matt back there, I think he'd probably say that some of these guys are smart enough to figure out that if they know they're only going to be subject to this once every interval, that, you know, so.
I don't see any problem with just putting random.
Right. I would.
Okay, we'll make sure that that's clear in there.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions? No, I know we're out of time, should we?
Well, real quick on Mentor, right now the staff is getting trained. I'm just getting all the staff into the system. We had security issues with the state that we couldn't, the county workers weren't getting in. Right now, the only thing that we know we can do in there is subscribe to a work queue. There are things in there they want us to do, and that's taking cases that are coming through and assign them to our individual work teams or individual workers. And the task, we have about 200 and some tasks in there that needs to be completed. I'm trying to figure out what they are and how we do them. We're getting bits and pieces of the training. We haven't gotten all our training yet, and they're coming down in bits and pieces. So hopefully the state will get all that to us so that we will know what we're doing in Minsure. Because right now it's unclear.
It's a mess.
It's a mess. We have 668 individuals in that came back from Minnesota Care. That is our responsibility now. They're in the MMIS system right now. We're responsible for them. Exactly what we need to do on that, that's unclear too, but if they report a change, we need to do something with that, so we gotta figure that out.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to say I really appreciate these reports, and I, just like last week's report, Brian, what we had on the agenda, that, I mean, there's a lot to this, there's a lot to learn, there's a lot that changes, and I think having this, and not only before us up here who sometimes have to make decisions on some of it, but for the public to hear it as well, on just what are some of these processes that we go through, because this is really an important subject throughout the state.
Yeah.
So, thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
I guess I was going to comment too, you know, you're concerned about going over time and stuff
Yeah.
like that. But I think this is important, you know.
Yeah.
5, 10, 15 minutes extra of our time is not going over time, and I appreciate you doing this.
I think we will come back on the Minsure topic and schedule just a conversation about that, just to
When we can
provide more.
know a little more about
Know
that.
a little more.
That'd be good, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Rhonda, Teresa, Mary, and Larry, thank you very much.
Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving.
And to you. Thank you. Next, we have Dave Overbo, our city engineer, our county engineer, rather, and his right-hand man, Nate Gannon. Good morning.
Morning. We've been kind of working on some cooperative type agreements on some projects that are upcoming. The first one being our mill and overlay on County Road 3 or 11th Street North here with the city of Moorhead. We've met several times on the planning stage and the scoping stage. Nathan's met with the assistant city engineer a couple different times, as well as this week he's been out there taking a look at all the curb ramps and all the intersections. And we put together a little MOU, which is real similar to what we've done with is it Barnesville and Georgetown, I believe, most recently.
And Ulen in the recent past, didn't we do something there too?
There was a street project up there. I don't know if there's an MOU for Ulen.
Okay.
But you're correct, though. We did have a joint kind of a project there, and they were working within our right-of-way.
Hit it all, we had one.
Hit it all, yep.
That's right.
Yep. And basically what the MOU does explains a little bit about who's doing what and how the costs are being broken down. This project is being split roughly 50-50, but with the extent of the footprint. Our footprint's a little bit bigger. We've got the roadway. Their footprint is more of the parking lanes, I guess? Correct. So I guess we put that together. We've run it by our county attorney's office, as well as the city of Moorhead has reviewed it as well. Do you know, Nathan, has it been run through city council?
I don't believe it has yet, no. But they've got a copy of it in
We're
there.
talking about Holly, though.
The first one's Moorhead.
Moorhead.
This is right over here.
Yeah, okay, gotcha.
What do you wish, gentlemen?
Well, this, if I can comment, it's part of our 5-year plan.
Correct.
And it is in the plan for 2014, right?
Yes, absolutely.
And I just, it's something I drive every day, and it's needed.
Yeah.
It's clearly needed, so I would certainly move that we enter into the MOU with the city of Moorhead regarding the mill and overlay project.
I would second the motion.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Carried.
The next MOU, like I said, they're real similar in nature how we put these together. And this one is for a portion of turnback roadway that we did in the city of Hawley. Our County Road 33 used to go north of Highway 10, and it would go directly east for about 3-4 blocks and then go back north in the shape of an L. With the project that we did this past summer, it made sense to keep our state aid highway going straight north of Highway 10 for a few blocks and then L back towards to the east. So it just is a real nice little swap there. Everything went well with the city of Hawley. Everything went well with the project. After the project was let and partially under construction, it was decided that maybe there should be a little more work done on the roadway we're turning back to them, to the tune of a mill and overlay. Our estimate at the time is, or at this time, is right around $100,000. We did seek some quotes from the contractor that was in Hawley last fall, but due to timing and workload, the prices were undesirable, so we did not accept that quote. We feel that we would get our best bang for the dollar by going out to bid. Plus, it's backing right up in that $100,000 mark, which does require us to go to bid anyway. We put together an MOU with the city of Hawley, explaining again some cost share items. Initially, we thought due to the situation, a 50-50 split would be fair. They countered back at 60-40, and I guess we felt that would still be acceptable to the county, as typically when MnDOT does turnbacks to certain municipalities, they do a lot more work. But in this situation, there's also some work being done on the roadway turning back to the county. There's about a block or so, 3/4 of a block of sidewalk and possibly some curb and gutters. So there's some work done on their road. So we felt 60-40 is still fair. The one thing that, our budget's not unlimited, so the highway committee kind of felt maybe we should kind of try to stay within about a $60,000 limit, and that's what 60-40 would be on a $100,000 job. We did take a look at the bid prices of the current project that's just been completed, as well as the quote prices, which were kind of high, and we tried to kind of put them together to put together what we feel is the best engineer's estimate, which is right at about $100,000. So that's kind of what we come together with.
Mr. Chairman, again, for the tracking committee, we went through this, and I think everything that Dave said, our committee did agree to move forward with. The one area that I thought that we had stipulated in this, and you touched on it, was that we wanted to put a cap on what our 60% would be in terms of dollars. Well,
60,000, says you,
okay, with a maximum, I didn't.
on subdivision 5. On
Okay.
the page.
Oh, I'm on the wrong one here. Jenny, did you, oh, thank you. Okay, good. Okay, so that's it. So it is in there, I just wanted,
Yep.
okay. I had lost my packet, so I
Okay.
just got my new packet this morning. So I
Sure.
didn't get a chance to read that.
I would move that we approve the memorandum of understanding with the city of Hawley for the turnback.
Discussion.
Yeah, now you say we don't have bids on it yet. If it goes over $100,000, but we still only, say it comes in at 120 or 130,000, we're
Yep.
still only going to pay 60,000.
We will pay the maximum of 60.
We will pay a maximum of 60.
And I think there's some language that says both parties have to agree to the bids, and I would assume if it gets that high, more than likely we would not, that's pretty, you know what I mean? Anytime it gets over 10%, you gotta take a good look at what's wrong. Are the bids high, or is your estimate low, or what's the conditions?
Okay.
What might happen there is that Hawley then could have the option of rejecting the bids.
Very good.
Or they would have the option of saying, well, it's close enough and we'll take that extra. Keep in mind, our original thought on this, Frank, was that this should have been, and going from our highway engineers, they felt the 50-50 was the appropriate cost share to begin with. They came back and said the county should do 60. Well, so we said, okay, you've given us enough information to suggest that maybe we should. However, that 60, from our standpoint, has to come with a cap.
Very good.
So
Okay.
that's what that is.
And then another thing, just to pass on to the rest of the board here, last night we did meet with the city and talked a little bit about snow removal, and they did pass on that it wouldn't have to be done in 2014. So that would be another item too, is if, if by chance the bids came in real high next spring, we could wait until we got another paving job in the area and tie it to a bigger project, which might make sense as well. We'll have to feel that out this spring, but, $100,000 is a good enough job. There's a lot of things going on in Holly. I'm assuming those motels will get bituminous paving, so there'll be paving going on. So we should be able to see a reasonable bid, but in the event we don't, I think we could let that one, as per their wishes too, at a later time. It doesn't have to be done next year.
Further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Carried. You have one more, Dave.
Yeah, the last item would be a request for out-of-state travel. This past year, 2013, our National County Engineers Conference was in Iowa, and Nathan and I were both slated and approved to go, but with the flooding we had, we felt one of us should stay back and keep an eye on our road system and the flooding within the county. So we currently have enough budget in the 2013 remaining budget for one of us to go to the 2014 conference. Again, I guess we feel this is pretty beneficial to our, to the work that we do for the county. There's over 75 technical presentations on engineering projects, new materials, legal issues, and even legislative platforms that we feel we benefit from finding out what's going on out in the rest of the country, as well as networking with all the other county engineers from the United States. So we would like to go again. Our current 2014 budget does have funding for both of us to attend, in addition to the remaining budget that we have in 2013 as well. So,
Move to approve.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
You got it.
thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Deputy Sheriff Matt Cyril. Good morning, Matt.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning, Matt.
I didn't provide you with a whole lot of paperwork. 2 weeks ago, Sergeant Brian Norberg turned in his intent to retire at the close of the year, so December 31st, he's going to retire. He will have almost 29 years of service at the Sheriff's Office, so obviously he's at the top of the pay grade. What we're requesting at the Sheriff's Office is to promote a sergeant to replace him and to fill another person, a full-time equivalent, to fill his opening. Cost-wise, I can't give you any hard numbers on that because it depends on who we promote and who we hire. I think roughly it'll be a wash either way. Brian's going to receive close to $30,000 with payouts with vacation, comp, and sick. He's at the top end of the pay scale. Obviously, whoever we hire would not go above that step 3. So we will see a savings, obviously, when we hire somebody new, but there's a payout that he'll receive for all of the 29 years of service here.
But Matt, that cost neutral, if we want to call it that, that would be for the first year. Then after that, you would actually see savings.
Correct.
So the reason it's cost neutral the first year is because
The payout.
Because of the payout.
Right.
So, yeah, I would move that we approve the request not only to hire up, but to then replace the sergeant position, promotion.
Second. Discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Carried,
All right.
Matt.
I was hoping this would take a little longer.
Oh, we got to try later.
Go back to work, huh?
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll go to committee reports at this time, and Chief.
Let's see, the only thing I had last week was Clay County Council on Aging with Dale Raleigh and the senior groups around the county, and they're all very active. Everything's going well. Dale's doing a great job, and and reports from the various senior groups around the county. So that was it for me.
Right.
On Thursday, I had FM CAWC, which is the regular meeting, just regular agenda items. I also had Soil and Water Conservation District, which was not able to attend because it went on at the same time. And Family Health Care also on Thursday. We had a guy in there talking to us about a new search for a new CEO over there. So He was giving us a presentation of what they would do. And yesterday, I guess what Dave talked about, we went down to Hawley and talked about that snow removal and that different routing on that, and we had a very good meeting with the Hawley people, and went very well, and got into an agreement.
Is somebody leaving from Family Health?
Yeah, the CEO.
Patricia is leaving.
She is?
Her husband got a job some other place, and she's.
Yeah, her husband got a job in there, so.
Okay. Anything else, Frank?
No.
Hey, Kevin?
Okay. Last week, we had highway tracking meeting, and the topics were, what we acted on today was the cost share and the MOU on Casella 33 and Hawley. And we did start looking at the process for how we're going to deal with this formula on the wheelage tax issue for monies going back to communities as part of the monies that we collect. So we asked Dave to research, get a little more data for us. I think we're moving in the right direction. I think we're getting close to proposing something before this board in terms of what each community might see on an annual basis based on collection dollars reaching a certain level. So I think they've done some good work to this point, and I think what they're doing is pretty fair. And on Thursday, we had a Solid Waste Advisory Committee meeting, and we got a report from Larry Henry on just the activities out there. And we got some information on our permits and what we might have to do if we were to start storing trucks there, or dealing with changing of or transferring waste to the Perham facility. And of course, that was also a topic of continued discussion, and it's certainly high on our radar that we want to really be involved with that group and possibly become partners, as we've talked about. I think that would be really good for our county to do. So, and John may have, or Brian may have more on that, but that's all I had.
John?
Okay, well, I had first two meetings were same as Kevin's, and he reported the highway meeting tracking meeting we had last Tuesday, and I think he reported everything there. The SWAC meeting, I'm encouraged by, even though I think there's some on our committee or board that still think things won't work, I'm encouraged that there's all kinds of possibilities to make, to take advantage of working together with this burner in Perm, and we simply need to find the logistics for trucking to make it work, and I'm confident that there's a way to do it. We simply haven't figured it out yet, but we will. I had a meeting of the executive committee for the Basin Commission with our new soon-to-be executive director was in charge of the meeting, and that was a telephone conference call that went well, planning for coming up to the annual conference, which is in January, and hopefully all of you can attend. It'll be in Fargo this year, so should be able to come to parts of it, I hope. Mm-hmm. The Joint Powers meeting for local water planning was held in Monoman again that day, and we had, I think, 8 counties present, and again shared concerns with water planning. A lot of the issues with water that's coming up is tiling and how we deal with tiling for permitting and so on. It's a big issue, and we haven't figured out for sure how to do that. But all the counties or watersheds are trying to figure out the best way to permit and to control all the tiling that's going on. So that'll be an ongoing issue. I did attend the Voxland gathering together with several of you. I guess everybody except Kevin.
Yeah, I had a conflict, and I apologize.
It was an interesting gathering, and that was kind of fun. Then yesterday, I had to skip my Lakeland meeting because I had a meeting of the Roundtable for Local Water Planning down in the cities, and that'll be my last one. They're going to rotate. AMC's going to rotate leaders now. It's been 4 years I've been sitting on that group, but we'll have new people taking over in January when I go off the board of AMC. And we've been working with the whole issue of one watershed, one plan. And the fact that rather than each county having to do several plans for water planning to meet the requirements of MPCA and watershed districts and everybody else, that there now will be one, you could do one plan for your area if it's done along watershed boundaries. And so I know that Wilkin County has decided, I think they're the first county in the states that's decided to do that. And they won't be doing their own plan, they'll be incorporating their plan with the watersheds in their county. And I'm hoping that others will pick up on that. It's voluntary so far. We're hoping by 2020 that everybody's on board, and that eventually at some point we want it to become mandatory. But we think voluntarily will work for many, because it's simply going to be less work if you can do it one plan rather than doing the many plans that are currently in place. So that was an interesting run, being involved with that board. We did get legislation through last year to accommodate this one plan, and so we feel that we've succeeded in what we set out to do 4 years ago when we started that group, and we'll see where it goes from here. That's all.
On Tuesday, November 19th, I had local advisory council for adult mental health. General business, we had a presentation by Lori Kinn of Family Health Care on the Affordable Care Act. Agency reports, there were several. There were 10, and they were all well detailed. And this speaks very highly of the support that Clay County provides for mental health issues. Wednesday, November 20th, Lake Agassiz Regional Library Executive Committee, general business, union discussion, and union negotiations. Thursday, November 21st, Lake Agassiz Regional Library full board meeting, general business, financial updates and report, director's report, the revision of a particular policy, and then the election of the 2014 executive board and member reports. Brian, you're on.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Right after the board meeting last week, we did have a meeting to discuss or talk more with Dilworth about law enforcement functions. And I think they presented at the meeting last night, so I think they are deciding to go ahead with seeking a chief of police. We had very good discussion, brought some interesting statistics forward to Dilworth and things, but I think Dilworth will probably just go forward with selecting a chief of the police. Two members of the commission that we met with last week, I think that was a general consensus, wasn't it? So, okay. We had some further work on some labor contracts. I talked about that last week, a little more discussion on that this week. It's moving ahead very favorably. A little work on the budget. We've included some of the abatement dollars that we anticipate. Remember, about a year ago, you passed a property tax for the first 2 years of new housing, and I reported on that. We've made some adjustments to that with public health, and I plan to do a report December 3rd, which would be next week then, in regards to the budget, current budgets, expenditures through the year. And just because, remember, December 5th, that's Thursday night, we have the Truth and Taxation, the public hearing in regards to that, so we'll certainly give you an update on that. Also, Lori and Nancy Gunderson are putting together some, I'll just say a spreadsheet in regard to some examples on how taxes are changing. I think we're going to hear probably from the rural environment that the assessed values are really increasing on ag land, and we're trying to do some comparisons on the valuations there. And we have one interesting one that we're just going to use as an example. A property that owned 400 acres before now has probably very, very close to meeting the thresholds of the $1.5 million of value. And when that property adds 200 acres, that 200 acres costs them in taxes as much as the 400, because it's double the rate. And we'll try to go through some of the examples of that. And I don't think that's really well understood. We try to keep talking about that, but hopefully we'll talk more about that on that Thursday night. Even though I know it's a budget hearing, but I think it's also the big question on taxes is the valuation and how it changes and the threshold of the state and things like that. So the SWAC meeting has been well reported on. I too think there's some really good opportunities here, and Commissioner Everett and I may go over to their meeting tomorrow. I'll check on that right after the meeting and see if we can make that work out to talk about the involvement, further involvement. We have to make some moves, I think, on that. I had a diversion meeting, administrative meeting, went well. Just a lot of things moving in the right direction there. Last time you reported on what the board was doing, and I think that was good, and talk about the crop insurance and things like that. Had a central administrative staff meeting that went well, talked about a lot of things that you talk about here. Had a conference call in regards to the AMC presentation, and that's when I kind of lined up the meeting for tomorrow. We've met with the architect and are finalizing some things there for motor vehicle. We still feel we're going to be on track. We're going to have that project done by April 1st. It got bogged down, but it's loosening up again and moving forward, so we're happy with that. And I did accompany Commissioner Gross and Dave to Holly yesterday afternoon. Again, thought we had a very good meeting, clear understanding. I think we have a real good rapport going there. So with that, Mr. Chair, I think that completes my report.
Gentlemen, anything else?
I just want to comment on the tax assessment thing, or the tax increase for next year. My house went down, I don't know, 2 or 3%, but my land in Clay County went up 23%.
Yep.
The tax on it.
You're really seeing a shift in that, and you're going to...
That's still homestead. I mean, I didn't lose the homestead on it yet. That's with homestead. If I was over the threshold,
you would have really been...
It would really been high.
Yeah. But the land values have shifted so much in the last 2 or 3 years, and I know that's I don't want to say difficult to understand. Hopefully the cash rent and the income coming off of those appreciated values are helping that out, because that was a topic of the issue of discussion at the township meeting the other day too, is the high valuations and how much of an investment. Like one township officer was saying, a small business might invest $500,000 to be able to make a living off that, structures, inventory, whatever. But a farmer probably has to go out and invest $3 million in land in order to make a living off it. I'm just using that as an example of what they repeated, and we understand that too. So
I think the only way that's going to change is if the state changes the threshold at 1.5 million. They got to move that threshold up.
I think
probably
they do.
2.5
They do
million.
change it, adjust some every year, but it can't keep up.
It can't keep up.
Keeping up with the
the
inflation.
land value is going faster than that.
Yeah.
Right.
Commissioner Campbell reminded me we have to act on this agenda addition regarding meeting schedule for December.
Second.
One question on it. On the 5th, we're not. It's just going to be the citizen input. We're not having a board meeting, or are we?
That's correct.
Okay.
So it's planned.
Because we're having one 2 days before that. So yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So some on the on this one it said board meeting. That's what it was. Okay.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Carried.
And Mr. Chair, just one more thing. I apologize there was some confusion in this regards, and of course, every year the AMC meeting is the week before that. It's that first week, and then we change it to Thursday, and then we have the TNT, and with AMC moving a week later, we were just in the mindset that would shift along with it, and it wasn't. So we apologize for the confusion on that.
Jenny, Vicki?
No, thank you.
We're adjourned.